What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the brother Eric Levin with the donations to the channel via the Cash App. Much respect to you for showing love to Too Raw for TV. All right, so good question for you guys. And of course, this is very subjective. Depends upon how you look at these things, although I suspect a lot of you all may be a bit biased in how you view this one. But what is the better NBA rivalry? Bulls Knicks or Warriors Cavaliers? Of course, I'm talking about the 1990s Bulls versus the 90s Knicks versus the 2010 Cavaliers versus the 2010 Warriors. Okay. I mean, these two rivalries were marquee rivalries, must-see TV. But which one was the better rivalry? I gotta be honest with y'all, man. I got to go with Warriors Cavaliers on this one. Warriors Cavaliers. And part of it is that this was a rivalry that was for the championship. Okay. These two teams were meeting in the NBA Finals. They met in the NBA Finals for, I believe, was 4 consecutive seasons. 2014-15 through 2017-18. Matter of fact, during that time period, you could pretty much pencil in at the beginning of the year, barring tremendous and unwanted injuries, Cavaliers and Warriors in the finals. I mean, you know, this was not a time of great parity in the NBA. But despite that, the ratings were much better than what we're seeing today. You know, Steph Curry's box office. We don't mind seeing Steph Curry jack up threes because we know that's his game. That's his bread and butter. That's what he excels in. We just don't want to see pale imitations of Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, for that matter, all across the NBA landscape. You know, we don't want to see that. We don't want to see what we saw the other day in that game. What was it? Bulls versus who was it? Hawks? Bulls Rockets? It was Bulls Rockets, maybe. Whatever the case may be, a game where they missed 75 3-pointers. An NBA record, 75 threes were missed in that game. We don't want to see that. Okay? So, you know, while Bulls Knicks was a great rivalry, it was limited to the Eastern Conference. You know, still an important series, but not a championship round series. So that, to me, gives the Warriors Cavaliers an edge. Now, you can't even really argue this. Well, you know, you could say, well, Too Raw, the Warriors Cavaliers series was not really that competitive. I mean, yeah, the Cavaliers won a championship in 2015, but that was due to injuries. Although you could, 2016, excuse me, you could argue that, okay, outside 2016, it was due to injuries and the suspension. Then you could, but I could counter that, well, in 2015, they largely, Warriors, beat the Cavaliers due to injuries to Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. And then in 2017, 2018, you know, the Warriors had an advantage with KD. I mean, you already were a great team without him. You became a cheat code with KD. So it was pretty much impossible for the Cavaliers to be really competitive with them. So, you got to throw that into the equation as well. Being fair and honest. Look, and then, if you argue that, but then with with the Knicks and Bulls, I mean, outside of '94, the Bulls owned them, and that year Michael Jordan wasn't playing on the team. So that rivalry, although it was significant and it was great to watch, and I prefer that type of basketball, the physicality of it, you know. Although the Knicks weren't ridiculously physical like the Pistons were, but that series was pretty one-sided as well. Don't get me wrong, in '92, they came close to beating the Bulls, 4-3. In '92, '93, they had a 2-0 lead against Chicago, but Chicago came back to win 4-2. '94, I mean, Mike wasn't there. '96, 4-1. And then that's it. They didn't play each other in the playoffs more than that. And then '91, I think that was a first-round series where the Bulls swept them 3-0, if I remember correctly. So it was more of a, honestly, it was more of a regular season rivalry with the Bulls and Knicks. In the playoffs, it really wasn't that close. And Michael Jordan was pretty much the difference maker. The Knicks didn't have Michael Jordan. Also, you could make an argument that the Cavaliers Warriors had a little bit more star power overall. The Knicks had Patrick Ewing. He was their superstar. The Bulls had Michael Jordan. And they had Scottie Pippen. And then later on, they had Rodman. But by that point in time, they weren't quite as great a rivalry. Although the regular season games were still really great. I mean, the regular season games was bananas. But postseason, after '96, they didn't play each other anymore. Although they should have in '97. But, if you remember a suspension during that Miami Knicks series ruined it for the New York Knicks. But with the Cavaliers, you had LeBron James, you had Kyrie Irving, you had Kevin Love. With the Warriors, you had Stephen Curry, you had Klay Thompson. Depending upon what team you're talking about, they also, of course, later on had Kevin Durant. Trying to think, I don't, look, Draymond Green is not no damn star to me. Okay, just not. So at the end of the day, they just still had more star power overall. And, another thing too, outside of the tremendous play of Michael Jordan, right? Sometimes those Bulls and Knicks games, from a optics standpoint, for the average fan, I'm talking about the average fan because I like that type of basketball. But for the average fan, sometimes that type of basketball could be a little bit hard to watch. Especially, I would say '94 onward, the scoring started going down in the NBA. Sometimes I remember the games could be final score, something like Chicago 88, Knicks 84, Jordan 41 points, phenomenal performance by him. But then, look at the rest of the team, Scottie Pippen, 3 of 14, Rodman, 17 rebounds, but only 2 points. And, Steve Kerr, maybe 7 points, 2 3-pointers, Luke Longley, 9 points. You get what I'm saying, right? Whereas with the Warriors and Cavaliers, I still don't like the way they played, but they weren't shooting a ridiculous amount of threes at that point still. I mean, the Warriors did, but they can get away with it. When you have Klay Thompson, you have Stephen Waddell Curry, you can get away with it, right? But it still wasn't a ridiculous amount of threes. The Cavaliers still had their style of play versus the Warriors. The Warriors were still seen as unique, revolutionary. The games, just from a casual standpoint, was more free flowing, more high octane. It was probably more entertaining to watch to a casual. You know what I mean? So to me, I think the better rivalry was Warriors versus Cavaliers. Uh, and even the way that it was marketed. I mean, the league pretty much marketed the NBA around these two guys over the past 10 years, Stephen Curry and LeBron James. Now, of course, LeBron James doesn't play for the Cavaliers anymore, but they have been the two premier players. Although, you have other guys that have been MVPs and other stars, Giannis and Luka and Harden, and Russell Westbrook. But you know what I'm saying? These two guys, from a winning standpoint, from a placement in history, how their peers view them, they've been the two best players in the league. Michael Jordan was the best player in the NBA, although he didn't play for 18 months in the 90s. Patrick Ewing was a great player, but Patrick Ewing, has a bit of reputation for being something of an underachiever. Okay, he was expected to win a championship for the New York Knicks. As heralded as he was coming out of Georgetown, in 1985, the perception was that he was going to lead them, the New York Knicks, to a championship. And that never happened. I mean, he went to one NBA Finals in 1994. Unfortunately, he ran into an even greater center in Hakeem Olajuwon. But it never really happened. And one other thing I want to add to it. The Warriors and Cavaliers series, you had one guy, LeBron Ramon James, who dominated the basketball, who put up ungodly stats, but more often than not, he came up short, especially in the clutch. More often than not, except for that 1 year where you had this suspension of Draymond Green, the first time and to this date only time a player that I can recall, at least a significant player, has been suspended for the NBA Finals game. The injury to Andrew Bogut. All those things contributed to them eking through, plus Kyrie hitting one of the biggest shots in the history of the NBA, and definitely the biggest shot in Cleveland Cavaliers history. All those things culminated to them eking through and winning the title. Michael Jordan, on the other hand, dominated those series from an individual perspective, dominated those series from a statistical standpoint, and he came through in the clutch many times for the Chicago Bulls. He literally was often the difference between victory and defeat for Chicago. The big difference in those two teams was Michael Jordan, and that's partially one of the many, many, many reasons why Michael Jordan is the GOAT over LeBron Ramon James. Anyway, that's what I got to say about him.